and kick off this webinar and to just say hello to everyone who's made time to be here today. I wanted to join you because the Interstate Rail Compact program is an important one under the bipartisan infrastructure law. It's an opportunity for states to work together, to come together in advancing passenger rail. Obviously, a lot of you know about existing compacts, whether they're between the states of North Carolina and Virginia, or the Southern Rail Commission that includes Mississippi, Louisiana, and Alabama. This program is going to provide financial assistance to entities that implement interstate rail compacts, and that program is going to provide much needed funding for the entities to cover activities like the costs associated with administration, systems planning, and also the preparation of applications for our other bipartisan infrastructure law grant programs, of which there are many, including the federal-state partnership, and also the Consolidated Railroad Infrastructure and Safety Improvements program. Interstate rail compacts are eligible applicants under many of FRA's discretionary grant programs, so please keep that in mind. And the funding provided in fiscal years 22 and 23 that's under this notice of funding opportunity is an excellent opportunity for existing interstate rail compacts to help implement and provide intercity passenger rail service now and into the future. So I am very excited about this program, about these efforts, and hope that states can put forward some new initiatives, as well as continue the efforts of those existing compacts. And we know that in many ways this is complicated and complex. We've done a series of technical assistance webinars, of which this is absolutely a part of that series, but FRA staff is available to assist you all as you navigate this new program. We are definitely excited about it, and we look forward to working with you all, and again, really encourage you to utilize this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Administrator Bose. So today I'm joined with two of my colleagues who I'll let them introduce themselves here in just a moment. But for those that I didn't introduce myself at the beginning, my name is Ryan Arbuckle. I'm the Chief of Program Coordination and Strategy Division within FRA. And I'll turn it over to Mark and Jesse to introduce themselves real quick.
Hi, my name is Mark Dixon. I'm a Transportation Industry Analyst with FRA's Rail Program Policy and Performance Division.
And I'm Jessie Samuel. I'm a Community Planner with FRA's Office of Railroad Planning and Engineering.
So a little roadmap for kind of what we're going to cover today, and then we're going to kind of jump right into it. So we're going to give a little bit of an overview of the Interstate Rail Compact program, talk about how to apply for a federal grant program with FRA, and then go over some best practices for the project narrative and statement of work areas of the application, just some lessons learned that we've seen through other programs, and just common traps that applicants tend to kind of fall into when they're preparing both the project narrative and statement of work. So I'm going to turn it on over to my colleagues, and they're going to lead us through the overview of the program.
All right, thanks, Ryan. So this is Jessie, and I'll kick it off with an overview of the program. So this is a new grant program that came out of the bipartisan infrastructure law, and the purpose of the program is to provide financial assistance to existing interstate rail compacts to improve, promote, and develop intercity passenger rail services through regional cooperation. So the NOFO is currently available on the Federal Register, and you are able to apply now through July 10th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time for the $5.8 million of funding that's available. Please note that applicants can submit concurrent funding requests. We just ask that your application states what other grant programs you have submitted to. All right, so let's talk eligibility. So the eligible applicants for this program are limited to existing interstate rail compacts that have been established in law. So that's important to note because the pool of potential applicants for this grant program is rather small. So if you're not operating an existing interstate rail compact, you're not eligible to receive funding. This slide also lists the activities that are eligible for funding. And the NOFO provides examples of what those activities might entail. So the purpose of these activities is to provide support where it's needed. So consider how your IRC can benefit through these funding activities. Example of funding activities, it can include hiring support staff or the services of an accounting firm for the cost of administration, completing a regional rail planning study or high-level corridor planning study that occurs before a service development plan for systems planning activities, or studying how to better coordinate the schedules of multiple passenger rail services operating within a region for operations coordinations. So those are just a few examples. Please review the NOFO for more examples. And also please keep in mind that these activities must be consistent with 2 CFR 200 cost principles. So make sure you are familiar with that circular. So here are the limitations of the grant awards. There is a $3 million set aside per fiscal year for this program. We have $5.8 million available in funding for this NOFO cycle because we are combining fiscal years 22 and 23. So FRA can award up to 10 grants per fiscal year, so a total of 20 grants for this NOFO cycle. And the maximum award size is $1 million per year, and there is a 50% non-federal match requirement. So here are a few key definitions to take note of for the IRC grant program. We've already talked about eligible applicants, but we really want to emphasize that eligible applicants for this grant program are limited to existing interstate compacts that have been established in law and have a legally binding agreement between 2 or more states. We are aware that there is a lot of interest in the program for the purposes of establishing an IRC. However, this program cannot support those activities at this time. Also, only IRCs supporting intercity passenger rail services provided by Amtrak are eligible. Compacts supporting commuter rail services are not eligible under this program. And commuter rail is generally defined as providing home and work-based trips that are shorter in distance. Also, please note that intercity passenger rail service and transportation are used interchangeably in the NOFO and are intended to have the same meaning. So please don't get too hung up on that. So interstate compacts are also eligible for FRA's other grant programs that are listed on the slide. And the work that the IRCs can pursue through this IRC grant program can lead into other eligible activities for these other FRA grant programs. And you can learn more about these programs on FRA's website. So that's all I have, and I will hand it off to Mark to talk about evaluation criteria.
Thank you, Jesse. Right, so there are 4 criteria under project benefits. First, you got effects on system and service performance along the interstate passenger rail route, effects on promotion of intercity passenger rail service, efficiencies from improved coordination of intercity passenger rail with shared freight, and ability to incorporate community and stakeholder engagement in transportation planning. And only that first one probably looks familiar if you apply to other FRA grants, because it's in a few other NOFOs for the grant programs. Next slide. For technical merit, you have tests and subtasks outlined in the SOW. Applications indicate ongoing commitment from each member state to achieving the proposed project, and the applicant has or will have legal, financial, and technical capacity to carry out the proposed project, and the proposed project is consistent with planning guidance and documents set forth by DOT, etc. So make sure you read the NOFO and respond accordingly in your narrative and application. Next slide. And for key departmental objectives, this program only has 3. So you got safety, economic strength and global competitiveness, and equity. All right, now going into NOFO overview and how to apply. Next slide. So we've got the notice of funding opportunity that's available on the Federal Register. You can also access it through FRA's Competitive Discretionary Grant Programs website. And next slide. The key parts of the NOFO are listed here. So for example, key dates, addresses, FRA contact information. My name is listed as contact, FRA contact. Feel free to email me if you have questions. And the table of contents as you see there. All right, as I mentioned, the FRA website has a link to the NOFO and some other high-level program information. And just another look at the NOFO and reminder that the deadline is July 10th at 5 p.m. Eastern. All right, and where do I apply? So you would go under grants.gov and find the opportunity number as you see there, and you would click on that that link. And there will be a synopsis, some information listed on that page. All right. So key steps. If entity does not have a unique entity identifier, you'll need to get one as soon as possible. It's important to register early in the federal government's system for award management. Keep in mind that it may take up to 2 weeks to get registered, so plan accordingly. For grants.gov, you can complete an authorized organization representative profile and create a username and password and submit an application addressing all requirements outlined in the NOFO. And required documents. If you've applied for other grants, you're familiar with these items. So the project narrative, which is and the statement of work, scope, schedule, budget. We have templates on the FRA website that you can follow. And other required forms, the SF-424 application for federal assistance, which has a couple different parts to it. There's also the additional assurances and certifications, financial capability, and disclosure of lobbying activities. All right, and for additional information about the program in grants.gov, you would click on that section where it says link to additional information, and I believe it links to the Federal Register. Next slide. All right, and the application review and selection process. So step 1 is intake and eligibility, where FRA will review each application for completeness and eligibility, determine which applications to move forward in the process. And then FRA will complete and complete evaluation of every eligible application using subject matter experts. And then step 3, selection, final funding decisions are made by taking into account the evaluation and selection criteria outlined in the NOFO. And then the process concludes with FRA publishing a press release with award selection announcement. And so we have a calendar on our website also that has NOFO and planned award selection announcements. So for this program, currently the plan is to have award selections announced November, December 2023. And lastly, here's another look at FRA's website where you can see the competitive grants application process. So that's on the grants section of our website. And that concludes the how to apply section.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. So I'm going to jump back in and we're going to talk some best practices, some lessons learned that we've seen that tips and tricks, if you will, to try and make sure that you're meeting the notice of funding opportunity and really highlighting your best opportunity to advance through the program. So, but before we get into that, there's been a couple questions real quick just related to the recording and posting of this information, and rest assured that we are recording it. It will post to our website shortly following this webinar, and the slides and everything will be made available as well as normal practice for all of our webinars. So that information's there. And then at the end of this presentation, we'll have an email box that if you have additional questions that we're not able to get to or that we don't fully answer, or you have a follow-up, please reach out to that email box to kind of get an answer for that. And again, that information will be provided at the end. So to jump back in, best practices. So oftentimes we're asked, what can we do? What can applicants do to really make their application shine and stand out? And it really starts with reading the notice of funding opportunity. We cannot emphasize this enough. The notice of funding opportunity outlines all of the requirements and evaluation criteria that FRA is going to be evaluating and looking at the applications and scoring them based off of what's in the notice of funding. So I'm going to say this a couple times, so apologies in advance for repeating myself, but read the notice of funding opportunity in its entirety, and really understand what it's saying and what the requirements are outlined within it, because that is your best bet at really advancing and bringing to light your project's benefits and the competitive advantage that it may have. So there's two other areas that generally kind of lack either demonstrate, they lack really kind of articulating the benefits of the project, and that's it within the project narrative and the statement of work. So those are kind of the two next areas that we're going to cover in a little more detail. So moving on to the project narrative. So the project narrative, it's a multi-part kind of structure, right? So it starts with our cover page and goes through the items here on your list. I will note that for the Interstate Rail Compact, the cover page is the project narrative, apologies, is limited to 15 pages. The cover page is not included in that limit. So this is a change from what our normal programs have. So just if you've applied for other grant programs with FRA in the past, you may be familiar with a little bit higher of a page limit. I just want to reiterate that this for Interstate Rail Compacts, 15 pages is the limit. Cover page does not count against that limit. So as you're kind of going through your project narrative, your cover page is really the first information that FRA is getting on it. It outlines the program, the applicant, the project costs, the lifecycle stage, and a lot of key information that FRA needs to be able to understand your project. And this is the first opportunity for us to see that. So making that information very clear and concise is helpful for us to evaluate and just get a good sense of a good first impression, so to speak, of what your project is about. So going on to the project summary, please briefly describe your project. It is helpful to limit this as much as you can to 4 to 6 sentences. It is, while, interesting, learning the history of the Interstate Rail Compact going back to Grover Cleveland may not be the most beneficial thing for reviewers to understand your project. So here is really, we want a concise, brief explanation about it. What's your anticipated benefits from the project that you're putting forth? And how will this help advance transportation, rail transportation in and around your area? So again, this is your, as we say, your elevator pitch here. So we want this to be brief and concise and kind of to the point. For your project funding, include those costs that are eligible. Try and limit it to those costs only. If there are ineligible costs within it, then it complicates things and makes the application a lot more difficult to understand and to evaluate. Be very specific about each source of your non-federal match. We need to know where those dollars are coming from. If you have a multi-faceted non-federal match it's very complicated, lay that out as clearly as possible for us so that we can understand and ensure that you are meeting that 50-50 match for this program, which is again different from our normal programs, which is normally at the 80-20. So again, for Interstate Rail Compacts, you're at a 50-50 match. Just really kind of spell the funding aspects out. This is an area that we've noticed in the past with past programs that can be a little hard to detangle. Put it in a table if you need to. Don't keep it in paragraph form if that's helpful. The easier you make it for us to understand where your funding sources are coming from, where the in-kind match is coming from, public versus private sector, how much railroad money may be coming in to help your fund your project, or how much state or local money might be coming in. Just identify those areas very clearly. If you have letters of support and commitments for funding letters, feel free to attach those. They can be attached as appendixes. And just identify, clearly if you have the funds or if you are waiting on a different authorization within the state or, some state legislation. Just be very clear here in this area. This is, again, an area that we've seen time and time again. It has been a little bit of a murky area for us at some of our applications. So we're going to skip over the applicant eligibility and project eligibility sections because we've already talked about those early on. So project location. Detailed project description. I'm looking ahead to the next slide. So spoilers, project locations coming up. Thoroughly discuss the transportation challenges and benefits. Include data, quantitative data if you have it, to support the benefits that you're proposing here. The benefits will be a little different for the Interstate Rail Compact program than what we've seen traditionally with capital projects. But if you can only qualitatively describe them, then that's fine. Show how that your activities are going to support a larger project, into the future. This is going to be a little bit different than what our normal capital projects are because the program eligibilities are more focused on support functions. But to the extent possible, qualitatively discuss the benefits of why the funding will help. And as I said, spoilers, project location was our next topic. Again, this one is very similar as to the detailed project descriptions, maybe a little bit different, but identify the areas in which the activities are going to be located, especially if you're doing promotion activities, right? Where are you going to be doing, where are these promotional activities going to be taking place? That's helpful information for us to understand. Again, as we're tying these activities that are funded under the Interstate Rail Compact program to the larger kind of projects into the future to kind of see how this funding is benefiting the larger implementation of intercity passenger rail across the country. If there is geospatial data, please ensure that it is in the lat long in decimals. So do not put it in like degrees, but try and get it into the latitude and longitude at the decimal level when you're submitting it. But again, this program may not have geospatial data associated with the project activities just because of the nature of it. But if applicable and as appropriate, please include that information. So include a separate section in your project narrative that focuses on how you are meeting the evaluation and selection criteria outlined within the notice. This is a great opportunity to go back to the NOFO and make sure you've reread the NOFO from front to cover to understand what the evaluation and selection criteria are. You need to identify how the project is meeting those. This is, again, an opportunity for you to justify to some extent, here's how we're meeting these goals from the administration. Here's how we're meeting the evaluation and selection criteria outlined within the NOFO through our proposed projects. And wherever possible, quantify those benefits. But if you cannot quantify them, qualitatively discuss how they're going to be realized. And last, we have that project implementation and management. How are you going to manage this project? How are you going to, what's the oversight going to be? How is your IRC structured? How are you going to show the federal government that you're going to be good stewards of the federal dollar, and show that the risk associated with providing this funding to you will be minimized because of the structures you have in place. So moving on, statement of work. So FRA has several different templates and examples on its website through this link here. Again, the PowerPoint presentation will be made available, so you all will have these links. But use the templates that we provide. I mean, there's no reason to start from scratch. We provide templates that are designed to kind of help us understand the areas of the application that we're requiring for you, and they outline and help kind of get you meet those needs and the requirements of the notice. So they're there. Please use them, and hopefully that helps kind of navigate through the requirements a little more. When you're working on your statement of work, kind of organize it in a logical manner. Look at how it's going to flow through. Use the appropriate timing for tasks when you're putting it out, and kind of just really be clear about what your project entails. Again, this program will be different than other capital project programs because of the nature of the eligible activities. However, we still need to understand what your scope of work is that you're applying for. And then just, check your budget. Again, the numbers, right? The numbers need to kind of match up. They need to match up with what you're requesting. We've seen in the past where there's been mismatched numbers on the SF424 within the project narrative and then within the statement of work. And that's a little complex for FRA to understand what your actual costs are and what you're actually applying for. So you need to make sure that you're aligning all those numbers and do a quick check of them to make sure they all make sense and they all line up as you're going to submit it. This next area is, again, a little less for this program specifically, but again, we want to talk in the sense of the activities under the IRCs that IRCs will be undertaking under the Interstate Rail Compact program will hopefully help lead to the implementation of intercity passenger rail across the country. So we want to just kind of do a little plug on capital cost estimating guidance. And again, while not overly applicable here for this program, it's never too early to get a head start on this and understand this a little bit more as you kind of work to build up your capital projects for the actual implementation of new routes or expansion of routes along your intercity passenger line. So we just put some information in here for you on that. Again, the links will be made available when the presentation is posted. So I know that I talk really quick, and that was 37 minutes so far that we've gotten into. So we're just going to do a little real quick recap of some of the things and some reminders for everyone moving forward. So again, as I mentioned about 10 minutes ago, read the NOFO carefully. You need to really understand the requirements set forth, both of the requirements in the terms of project eligibilities and applicant eligibilities, in terms of the required forms you need to submit. Make sure that you're submitting all your required documents. The quickest way for your application to not be reviewed is if you fail to attach a required document. Those applications that are not completed will not pass the intake and completeness check, and the applications that do not submit all the required forms are not reviewed. So we can't even look at your application if you don't put in all the forms. So please understand and recognize what forms are required and make sure that you're submitting them all on time. That's the other thing. Submit your application on time. Don't be late. 5:01, applications submitted at 5:01 are not reviewed. You need to be submitted at the date by 5 o'clock. So I would set an alarm for yourselves right now at 4:30 to make sure that application's in. If there's technical difficulties with grants.gov, we cannot help you with that. We've gotten a couple emails in the past about that. That is not our system. Technical difficulties of submitting before the 5 o'clock deadline do not allow your application to be reviewed. So please ensure that you are registered with the SAMS number, that you have everything you need to be able to submit your application on time before 5 o'clock. And make your application easy to read. I mean, we are seeing an unprecedented number of applications coming in, hundreds and hundreds for each of our programs. We review each one of them. And the easier you make it for us to understand what your project is and what the benefits are, the easier it is for us to provide an assessment of it. Do not bury your key points in there. Put them out front, make them shine and show that. As I mentioned too, making sure your funding matches. Your funding numbers should match across your cover sheet, statement of work, project narrative, and SF424. We've seen many times that those numbers are vastly different, and that is hard for FRA to understand exactly what you're applying for. And make sure that your tables are numbered, and you're submitting an application and showing us that you're requesting federal dollars. Make sure that your application reflects that you are going to be able to be good stewards of the federal dollar and clearly identify what that federal dollar amount that you're requesting is. So we've talked a lot about the application process, right? Getting to that point. But here on the slide, we have what happens after you're selected, right? So you've made it, you submitted your application before 5 o'clock, you've read the whole NOFO, you have a clear understanding of what the ask is. Selections come, and towards the end of this year, you've been selected. Now what? Well, here's kind of the process to kind of going through the life cycle of your project, right? So after selection, we do a pre-obligation period where we work through the scope, schedule, and budget and identify your performance measures and terms and conditions of the grant. And then you start, doing your project. And then you'll have regular meetings with FRA to update us on your deliverables, your invoicing, and your performance measures, and showing us, how your project is actually meeting the things that you outlined. And then we'll kind of go to the closeout and final documentation and reconciliation of the financials, and then your project's done. So this is just a quick snapshot of it, right? So please don't look at these timeframes and go, oh my gosh, is that what it is? It's really pre-obligations. Kind of the more you make your application clear and the more you work on your scope, schedule, and budget and identifying your performance measures, the easier it is for FRA to go through that pre-obligation period. The more buried they are, the harder it is for us to kind of get there and on the terms and conditions in the grant agreement with you. So this is a partnership that, you've been selected for a federal award, and we need to kind of, again, be good stewards of the federal dollar and work with you to kind of make sure that we are all on the same page moving forward. And then it's your project's time. And then again, the final closeout. So we're gonna pause for a second. I'm gonna actually catch my breath and breathe, and then we're gonna kind of go into some Q&A session. So before that, I did say, as I mentioned, we have the email box up here, the FRA-NOFO-support@dot.gov. This is a monitored email box, and is quite possibly the best way to get in contact with someone from our grants team that can help answer any questions that you might have related to the program, specifically about the program. What I will say is that if you're asking for technical assistance on the Interstate Rail Compact program, we cannot offer that right now because we are in an open application period. But if you have questions related to the NOFO or questions about the process, we are happy to provide as much assistance as we possibly can on that. And then, we always offer at the end of the selections, if you're not selected, we offer debriefings for any applicants that may not have been selected upon request. And we're happy to kind of talk through your program and how you can, do better on your application for the next subsequent rounds. And then just our grants page here. More information about all of our discretionary grant programs is available on our website.